Hi, everyone. Welcome to Happy to See Me, the podcast that puts a spotlight on the overlooked and underestimated. I'm Erika Casupanan, and this week I am speaking with Dominique Defoe. But first, I love to start each episode by sharing something I was happy to see this week. And I have really happy news. My writing is now published in a book. I know, I can't believe I get to say that. And it has to do with podcasting. So I got invited to write the foreword for the book, Let's Talk Podcasting by Amanda McCusker. And a foreword is written by somebody other than the author, and they introduce the book and they share with the reader why they should read it and why they will get value out of the book. So I was so fortunate that Amanda invited me to write the foreword for her book. Amanda is an award-winning podcast producer and entrepreneur. And Let's Talk Podcasting, it's like a guidebook for getting into podcasting and also thriving in the podcast industry. So if you are thinking of starting a podcast, definitely check out Let's Talk Podcasting. It's available on Amazon now. And now it's so cool that if you search my name on Amazon, the book comes up. I read through the book before I wrote the foreword, and there are honestly so many good tips. Even me, somebody who's been podcasting now for 76 episodes, I learned new things too. So I will add Let's Talk Podcasting to the show notes. And what I was happy to see is me with my writing published in a book. I am also really excited about this episode because I am speaking with Dominique Defoe. She is a reality star, social media content creator, and writer, and you might recognize her from Netflix's Too Hot to Handle Season 4 and Perfect Match Season 2. I was a big fan of Dominique on both of her shows. I love the way that she represented herself as a Filipino woman, so she's half Filipino, half Black, and how she represented herself as a queer woman. Since reality TV, she has thrown herself into being a content creator where she is talking about everything from politics, the ins and outs of reality TV, representation, physics, and even some witchy spirituality. This conversation was so incredible. We talk about her experience being bisexual on a straight dating show, having her sexuality fetishized, and the challenges that women of color face on reality TV. I was a fan of Dominique before this interview, and I am an even bigger fan now. So let's just get into it. Here is my interview with Dominique Defoe. I hope you enjoy it. I know you're half Filipino. I must ask, do you speak Tagalog?
I understand it when it's yelled at me.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but outside of that, no.
So only when someone is angry, presumably your mother.
Yeah, or my Lola.
Oh my God, yes. That's so funny.
Unfortunately, nobody really bothered to teach me.
So wait, what are the words that you know?
I don't even know. I feel like I need to hear it. That's why it's so bad. And I'm just really bad with languages in general. I can understand conversations, especially there's a lot of Taglish.
Yeah.
And I'm okay,
yeah.
I know what they're saying.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm really, really bad with that. I know baklat because my grandma always was. And then maganda, I don't know. I know the basic words, but not enough to be oh, I'll have a conversation or anything like that.
No, I totally get that. When I grew up, my family all spoke Tagalog. I can understand it. I could speak it sparsely if I've been with my parents for 2 days, then it starts to come back to me to be able to speak it. But I felt like I really understood it as a kid and I can watch movies and all of that. But then I did, during the pandemic, I tried to do one of those language learning apps to learn Tagalog. And it turned out every phrase I thought I knew meant something else. And I literally thought every phrase was be quiet, the adults are talking.
Right.
I don't know. I feel it's funny how for the children of immigrants, it's the rage is where we really understand the language.
There's also so much slang too.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Yeah, I know. I'm maybe one day. Well, salamat for being here. So thank you. On this podcast, I love to talk to people who have been overlooked or underestimated in some way. So I want to start off by asking, have you ever felt underestimated?
Well, I majored in STEM and I look like this and I talk like this. So that's, kind of difficult in a male-dominated field. But I've been really lucky. I think my year when I went to engineering school was there was a lot of women. All the jobs I've had, I've worked on women-dominated teams. So I think I've been lucky in that sense. But I think definitely I can get underestimated, especially when I speak online about things that I care about, whether it's politics or something to do with engineering or science or something like that. Men definitely don't love it sometimes. So yeah, I think there can just be an underestimation there, just on the basis of how you look and how you speak. And it's it's an accent, it's a Valley Girl accent. It's not even I'm saying anything insane. This is just the tone of voice that I have. people definitely can like underestimate like what you know about a subject. But it's kind of fun because then you get to like prove them wrong. And at the end of the day, they're kind of the ones who look dumber for it.
For everybody listening, I have just been nodding nonstop the whole time you were talking. I'm like, yes, 100%. I feel that. One of my favorite moments from watching you on Netflix was on Perfect Match when you were like, I studied engineering. I'm like, fuck yeah, girl. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah, right. And I'm like, that's like one of the things. Like, it's very like patronizing. Like, he was like, oh, you think you know how to do this better than me? And I don't know if they aired it on the show. Honestly, I kind of skimmed it. I didn't really watch it. But I have been like telling him what to do to get across the lake. Like, for anybody who's listening, it was a challenge where it's like you're moving a metal box over a body of water, like attached by a pulley. And it's like, this is a very simple like physics equation. Like, this is just like a word problem in real life. And it's just like a force equals mass times acceleration. Like, it's not that hard. This is a middle school word problem. And I was explaining that to him, and he wasn't listening to me. And then Harry Jowsey did. And that's how he won, was like following my advice. And then he kind of made it seem like, oh, well, you didn't tell me that, and like all this stuff. And he's like, what's your major? As in to be like patronizing and to like be belittling. And I was like, engineering, like this is literally like my subject.
Honestly, watching that, it felt like taking the moment that I feel like so many people have experienced and putting it on TV. And that moment is when you're in the meeting and you suggest the idea that you know is a good idea and everyone kind of brushes over it. But then when somebody else says it, often a guy, then it's like, oh, yay, this is the best idea. We should all do it. So I was so frustrated, but I was also like, fuck yeah. And I was also like, okay, I'm not alone in feeling like that. That's good.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know we've both been on reality TV, and on this podcast, I don't usually get into the nuts and bolts of recapping the shows or anything. If you're into that, there's plenty of other podcasts for that. But there is one logistical, functional question I must ask about Too Hot to Handle. And it's how people are brought onto the show, and it's revealed in the first episode that nobody knows they're on Too Hot to Handle. It's a surprise. Was it truly a surprise that you were on Too Hot to Handle? How did they trick you into being on the show?
Yeah, I didn't know. I think I was like a little suspicious of it. But when we got there, I was like, okay, this is definitely not Too Hot to Handle. But they just reach out to you like it's a reality show. They don't even tell you what network it's on. And honestly, it was kind of like, for me, I'm like, I had like 3,000 Instagram followers. And I was like in college. Like, I was not on social media. Like, I'm not a model. I wasn't doing anything in the entertainment field. So I was like, I had no clue about anything. Honestly, I kind of thought I was going to get sex trafficked.
Oh my God.
Yeah, my mom was like, just go and do it. And I was like, I feel like you shouldn't be telling me that. What do you mean just go? Because it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, I don't know anybody like does this kind of stuff or anything like that. But then when we flew out and everything, I was kind of like, okay, maybe it's Too Hot to Handle. And like Greg said, like, I never really watched Too Hot to Handle. Like, I think I'd maybe like kind of watched it one time, like while I was doing homework. So the only reason I even thought that was because when we got to the villa, someone else was talking about it. And they were like, I thought this was Too Hot to Handle, but I guess it's not. On this series, it looks like they tell you like that night, but it was actually a couple of days.
Oh.
So, yeah. And then it's kind of like, you're like, okay, just sitting there and you don't think it's Too Hot to Handle because when you're watching it, you're like, oh, they tell them right away. When that's like not necessarily the case. So, yeah, I had no idea.
So you're like sitting there, you're living with all these people and you don't know the show for a little while.
No, you were all like, I don't know. We were just happy we weren't kidnapped, I think.
Yeah. You're like, there's actual cameras here. Cool.
Yeah.
How do you decide to do something then if you have no idea what the show is? You don't even know if it's real. You think that you're in danger. What makes you decide to go for it and go?
I think that's exactly probably how they end up casting people, because you would have to be crazy to do that. So that's actually probably part of it. I always joke that when they do like the mental health tests for reality TV, they're like checking to see who's a little psychotic. And they're like, we want them. Because it is crazy. And I think that's probably part of the premise of Too Hot to Handle. Like, no sane person is going to be like, I have no idea what this show is, and I'm just going to get on this plane and show up on this random island. But then that's exactly the kind of like recklessness they're probably casting for. So they kind of go hand in hand.
I remember when I did the psych test for Survivor, they show you your personality traits and it's like, usually everyone's kind of in the middle of the road for most of the personality traits, but there are a few where they're higher. So I think for me, I scored off the charts in terms of positivity. So I'm like, oh, okay, they know that I'm like going to be just like a nice person on the show. And I remember even the psychologist was like, yeah, we think you could be a really stabilizing force on your tribe. And I'm like, oh, they need me to be like kind of normal. But then I'm sure for Too Hot to Handle, it's probably like impulsiveness high, recklessness high, conflict high.
Right. Yeah. definitely. That's so nice though, positivity. I'm like, wait, that's cute.
I know. At first I was like, oh, they're going to think I'm not going to be able to play the game. But I'm like, no, but I think they realized I could, but in like a nice, positive way.
Yeah, that's nice. Everyone needs that.
You need like one person on a cast who's like that.
Yeah.
Were you that person on your cast?
The positive one?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I cried like almost every day.
Okay, I had read that. I had read that you cried a lot. So can you share what made it so difficult on Too Hot to Handle?
Oh, well, okay. So then part of it is like, you don't know it's too hot to handle. I thought I was going on, honestly, like a bisexual dating show. Like that's how they made it seem to me. And then I was like, everyone's straight. I was so confused. Because when I did like the casting for it, I was like, oh, I'm bisexual, like all this stuff. Like, I don't know if that's going to be a problem. And then obviously they don't say it. They made it so much like, no, this is not a straight dating show. Like they asked me my types, men and women, like all this stuff. So I'm going on there and I'm like, there's probably not going to be a ton of straight people there. Like, I don't really know. Obviously, they don't really explain the premise to you. But then I was like, oh my God, everyone's straight. And the girl I walked out with, Britain, which we, at the time, thought that was totally intentional because we're the only bisexual people on our season. It was not intentional.
Wow.
So like from day one, we asked to be together. And throughout the entire show, it was like never... There was like a moment where they made it possible because, again, of the crying. Like, we were so upset about it. I threatened to go home. I was like, I don't even know I'm here. So then they did let us kind of, but most of it was just like, it just wasn't treated the same as other couples. We were not allowed to sleep in bed together, even though like we'd been saying we wanted to be together since day one. So yeah, I cried a lot because of that. Because I was just like so annoyed because I was like, you told me this wasn't a straight dating show. I'm dating this man who's like, not even dating him. I don't even want to be with him. He's like 8 years older than me. And I'm like, everyone's like pressuring me to kiss him. I don't want to kiss him. And it was just a very weird situation because it's like, I thought we were supposed to be here with someone we like. I found someone I like. We're not allowed to be together. It was like really frustrating. So I cried a lot. I mean, it's not a good time, but like, yeah, I cried a lot.
That sounds so frustrating and so invalidating. If I understand correctly, you have been out as a bisexual for years, right? Like, it's not like a new thing. You've been out for years. You grew up in a pretty liberal part of the country. So what was it like to then go into the setting where they're like, no, you have to pretty much be straight?
It was crazy. That was like, I had never really thought much about my sexuality before Too Hot to Handle. Like, I will definitely say that. Like, I grew up very privileged in the community I've grown up in. Like, I grew up in a social justice education. I grew up in a very liberal community. When I went to college, I'd not met more than like 5 Republicans in my entire life. It was just very much like a bubble. And my parents always said, like, you're growing up in a bubble and it's going to pop and you're going to realize that like the world is a lot different than you think it is. I didn't even come out. I didn't even have to. I was just like, everyone assumed and they assumed correctly. And that was that. So for me to like go into an environment, my biggest wake up calls with this is what the world is like have all been on reality TV. Like when it comes to like racism, misogyny, homophobia, like, and because I mean, especially when you're doing the dating shows, like for Netflix, people go on young. I flew out for my first show at 21. By the time I was 23 and I already done 2 dating shows. So it's like part of your formative experience with like love, as well as kind of just in the entertainment industry and putting yourself out there and seeing what happens. And so, yeah, I definitely think that was like a really hard awakening, like with my sexuality, to realize that it's like, you're not going to be treated the same way as other people. And that was like the first time I had felt that.
How old are you now?
I just turned 25 last week.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Happy birthday. Happy belated.
Thank you.
Okay. So that means your frontal lobe is just starting to fully form. So you have gone through all of this when you're so young. I can imagine like how much that can mess with you. Like I did Survivor when I was 31. So I'm like, okay, I'm mostly an adult at that point. I understand, you know, this is just one small chapter in my life, but that was probably intense to go through that experience, have that bubble burst, and have it on Netflix, like massive. Yeah. What was that experience like?
Well, I mean, it's like really cool. I think like definitely like I'm very grateful for like the platform that I've built and like all the opportunities that have come from it. But honestly, I think it's been bittersweet for me with both shows. Like my storyline's been cut from both of the shows I was on. So I've never really watched any of them fully.
No, I understand 100%. I understand completely.
Yeah, people bring stuff up and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So yeah, I think it's kind of hard. It's definitely been like difficult because I guess those are the moments when you find out what makes it in and what doesn't make it in. For me, like my connection with the girl has been cut from both shows. And then like on Perfect Match, even on Too Hot to Handle as well, like a big parts of my storyline with the men and like me standing up for myself or just even honestly, just being myself has largely been erased as well. It's kind of bittersweet. It's a good experience. I wish that there was maybe let me say this in the most polite way possible. I wish that there was more of an understanding that people who are diverse, who go onto these shows, what makes a show diverse is having those voices and those stories be heard and represented according to how it actually happened. Just having a faces there that are diverse is not really enough if those voices and stories are not also there. So yeah, I wish that there was definitely, I wish it wasn't just so white and straight.
Oh my gosh. Again, for everyone listening, I am just nodding. I feel like most folks who listen to this podcast, they know the experience I had on reality TV. Obviously amazing, life-changing, dream come true, but also, again, an eye-opening thing to see how certain groups and certain people, especially if you're not the dominant group, how that gets depicted. And is it intentional? Probably not. I don't think anybody is going around trying to make people feel smaller, but it just shows that it's so ingrained in how we tell stories and how we view other people. And as much as, like you said, the exposure, getting followers, all the opportunities is great, there is a bit of a cost to that because you are compromised in the process. So I get that.
Yeah.
When I first got on reality TV, I realized that there's a quote unquote game to reality TV that's more than just the actual rules or premise of the show. So when you were on Too Hot to Handle, did you understand or figure out the game of the show? Was it something that you quote unquote improved on by the time you did Perfect Match?
Oh yeah, the politics. Reality TV is a massive game of politics. I always say some of these people, I'm they'll be really good politicians. I mean, I think even if you're not there, even when you're watching, you kind of know there's a formula to doing well on reality TV. As far as screen time and stuff like that, for sure. I've never done it. I'm kind of dumb, which is funny because whenever people watch me on reality TV, they're always oh, Dominique's so smart. I'm no, I'm an idiot. If I was smarter, I would just have followed the formula and you know what I mean? Then it's you'd be in the millions and stuff like that. But I just always refuse because I'm an asshole. So, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely a game. I mean, and it's hard to say because I also feel sometimes the feelings are very real. On Too Hot to Handle, I definitely felt those connections are real. 100%. I was these people genuinely do really, really like each other. And they both went on, I think it was Jawa and Nick and then Kayla and Sab. They both dated each other after the show ended. So I think it was real. But I think I mean, if you're going to go on reality TV and what you're going to want is just attention, then I would say the formula is definitely going on, having somebody from the beginning you're interested in, having some kind of minor conflict in between that points to some deep interpersonal trauma and leaving them. And then them helping you through it, and then you win. That's reality TV for me.
Anybody who gets a random DM that's inviting them to go somewhere and you think you might be human trafficked, listen to Dominique's advice and you will be in the millions after you do the show.
Right. I'm it's the reality TV key, you know?
I also find that on reality dating shows, many women of color, and I find in particular with Asian women, they rarely make it to the late stages of the season. We had the first Asian bachelorette this year. I find that for whatever reason on these reality dating shows, the Asian women aren't necessarily seen as the most desirable. Did you feel like this trend influenced your experience on either of the dating shows you did?
So it's definitely a factor. I think desirability politics is a massive thing. I wish they did show that more on reality TV because there's always conversations about it. I've had some of the best conversations I've ever had about desirability politics, colorism, featureism, all of those things on reality TV. These women are more than capable of knowing when that's happening to them and having those conversations. I will say, personally, I have not felt that.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt there were guys who were interested in me. Also, there was always a girl I like, so it kind of makes it difficult for me because I just didn't give a fuck about that or what they wanted. So I definitely watched a lot of people struggle with it. I think for me, I haven't really ever felt I was in a position where I was nobody wants to get to know me, but I have seen it. And I definitely, obviously we know what it is and the, effects of that. So yeah, it's definitely a thing. I definitely think it's harder. I also think that a really big aspect for it when it comes to women of color is the trauma dumping, which is something I've also noticed. Is when men match up with women of color, they tend to have a lot deeper, more intense conversations with them. and tend to be like more reactive towards these women rather than when they're with white women, they're very much like corny, cute, like whatever and all this stuff. And I think it's an implicit bias. But I think also because of that, the women of color have more of an opportunity to see who these men are based on how they react to them, their own identities. So they hate them. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, so there could be like one man, let's call him Jack. Okay, he's talking to a woman of color, he's talking to a white woman. If he goes to the woman of color and he's having these very deep conversations and he's really showing his ass, that he's kind of an asshole or like in the way that he talks about women and stuff like that, and he's going there with her and talking about politics, talking about his background, talking about all of this stuff, and she does not like him because of that, then that's an issue. Whereas if he goes up to a white woman and he's like, what's your favorite color? What's your dream date? And those are the kind of conversations they're having. Of course, she's going to be more likely to like this guy because he hasn't really gone there with her. Whereas I've noticed that men tend to go there with women of color more. And that's why I think it's like they can't fake that they like them as well because he's already given them a reason to not like them. So I think it's just like very like unfortunate. A lot of implicit biases definitely come up. And I mean, they don't air them, but it's said, like you hear them like from different seasons. I've heard there were guys who called the black girls monkeys.
Oh my God.
Yeah. On Too Hot to Handle on my season, a guy said he wouldn't get with a girl who was darker than I was. Immediately, no. You know what I'm saying? And they have those conversations with us. They tell us that. But they wouldn't tell a white woman that. They wouldn't look at a white woman and be like, I wouldn't date someone darker than you. So it's a different experience.
100%. And I think that it's so interesting that you bring up these things that don't necessarily make the show, but they're things that you observed your 2 times doing a reality dating show. And I think that that's the other layer is not only is this stuff happening, but it's whether or not it's even being shown to the masses. And when I think back to your portrayal on Perfect Match, what you describe about, you know, being upset that you were attracted to a woman and you had the connection with her, but that is not on the show at all. Instead, we see your portrayal where it's just like you are attracted to toxicity. But since then, you've talked about on TikTok how this wasn't really the full experience. There were other parts of the experience that weren't really shown that add context to your behavior. So can you talk a bit more about why what's not shown is just as important as what is shown? And what does that say about society and how we view each other in general?
I honestly was terrified on what was going to be on this show because even when we were filming, people in the cast were literally like, this is never going to be aired. Like, do not give a reaction, do not cry, do not anything. They were like, we don't know what they're going to put in, but especially the women and especially the woman of color, we're like, do not give the cameras anything because you have no idea what they're going to put on the show. And essentially, they didn't put any of the hate speech in, even though my entire connection was based on it, even from like the very first like night. Like the first night was so bad that people could hear us yelling across the entire house. And what's in the show is it looks like we're arguing over yoga, when really it was because he was like saying that men shouldn't experience emotions, men shouldn't dress outside of gender norms. When I was about to go to bed, was literally like, oh, it's okay, you're bisexual because you're a girl, but you wouldn't find me attractive if I was holding a dick in my hand. And I'm like, what? I'm like, this is not... I literally like kept on asking if this was a serious dating show. I was like, I feel like this is a fake dating show and they're literally just doing this on purpose. And I was like, no, this is like real life. And then like, he was just super controlling and was like, don't say this, don't say that. I'm like, I just met you. Like, as far as like how we would talk to each other on camera. And it's like within 24 hours. I'm like, what the hell is going on? He like went around telling everybody he couldn't match with me because I wasn't religious. And I'm like, I told him that I wasn't Christian before we even matched. And I know he had an issue with it. I don't have a problem with anyone's religion. If somebody's religious and they don't want to be someone who's not, I completely respect that. I get it. But it's like, I told you that. You act like it was okay. And I went around talking shit about me. Like why? Like, what the hell did I do? And then you have the challenge where he was just so patronizing and like literally was like talking over me. Like I would try to say something and be like talking over my head to the men in the house. And then like on that day of the rematch, he is like, gay men are not men.
Wow.
Calling a man a feminist is the same thing as a white person calling a black person the N-word with a hard R. Basically talking about his religion, saying like, you're going to hell if you're gay, like all this stuff. And it's like, this is all on camera, like all of it. Like, and I'm not talking like, oh, there's a camera in the corner of the room. I'm saying like, there's 3 people holding cameras up in our face. So to watch that back and to watch what is aired on screen to be us arguing about yoga and a challenge and me saying I like toxicity. And the ironic thing about that is I was talking about a girl when I did those confessionals.
Wow, yeah.
I was talking about the girl that I had liked, and they made it seem like it was about a man who we know is a homophobe, but that's been taken out of the show. And I just can't even can't explain how that felt to watch. I literally broke down crying. I lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks. And
oh my God.
I think in reality TV, they like to blame it on the hate comments. They're like, oh, it's the public. No, it's not. It's the way the story was told. I'm a feminist. I believe in certain things. And to have gone through this ordeal where it's I heard hate speech every single day from this man and had the stress of people telling me it wasn't going to be aired. So not only are you hearing it, but you can't really react to it. And then on top of that, have it seem as if I liked it. I was like, this is the most insulting thing that could have occurred. This. And so that was hard. And I think those are just the chances you take when you do this. Obviously, it's you signed up for it. But I think when you're a woman of color, there's a lot more risk that you're taking than if not. Because had I not been bisexual, Black, Asian woman who's a feminist and who's liberal, he would never have said those things to me. He said it on purpose to get a reaction out of me because he wanted to make drama for TV. If I was somebody else, I would not have been targeted in that way. So that's what kind of makes it difficult is also then when they were editing it, they were kind of this is really bad and we don't want to air this kind of speech to millions of people. And it's I can understand that. But then I'm also why did I have to go through it?
And you still have to share a bed with him or share a room with him?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's uncomfortable in any case, sharing a room with a stranger, but it's being with somebody who's so volatile, who does not respect who you are as a person. How are you supposed to feel safe and comfortable in that environment? I feel that already puts you on the edge. Ugh, and I'm so sorry about the edit. I can imagine if you are someone who grew up in a very accepting place, you never had to come out because it was always fine to be queer, and then to see that you're edited to have you having bad judgment and wanting somebody who's clearly a homophobe, that's probably so crushing.
Yeah, disgusting.
How you're able to recover from that when you were, 23, 24? Kudos to you for getting through that.
Thank you. Yeah, working through it.
How do you make sense of a portrayal that you know is not true to you?
I don't know. I'm still trying to answer that question. Because it's definitely it's something that's gone out to millions of people. In my opinion, I felt kind of used for my face and what I represent, basically being Filipina, being Dominican, being bisexual, being a woman. I feel all of these things are desirable on paper, but when they're actually put into reality, now you don't want it, right? So it's kind of okay, you want the lobotomy diverse version of me. That doesn't feel true to who I am. And I'm the one who has to pay the consequences for what these men did. It was so bad it couldn't be aired, but I'm the one paying the consequence for it. I'm the one suffering for it and looking at a version of myself on TV that doesn't exist, that's just gone out to tens of millions of people. Mm-hmm. You know? So that's a really difficult thing to grapple with, and to also feel the guilt of I would have felt bad if it had been aired as well. There was no good outcome from it. I probably would have felt a hell of a lot better than I do now, knowing that I'm the one who's misrepresented. But it also would have been bad had it been aired, where I'm it sucks that these conversations are happening. But I do think it's important that these conversations are aired. And I think I was made to feel really guilty for even wanting that, because it's why would you want queer people or people of color to see this? And it's because this is reality, right? And it's it was also during an election year. And this man thought Trump was the second coming of Christ. And it would be one thing if they are saying it with no argument. But they're not. I was there. There were other women there also upset about this. They weren't going unrefuted, right? And they look like dumbasses, to be completely honest. So honestly, I'm this would have been a good conversation to show, because this is reality. And so, yeah, it's hard to grapple with how you move on from that. And initially I was going to post an essay about what was aired and what wasn't. And then I kind of told myself, I was obviously no one cares, because I think that's what happens when you feel you've put yourself out there and tried so hard. And it's basically just completely erased. And it's I'm I feel you just made me into a bimbo for no reason. I'm okay, I'm bubbly, but I also I'm smart, and I have things to say, and I have a voice. And I feel that was completely taken away to protect a man's reputation. It's like, yeah, I wrote this essay, but now I don't even want to post it because I don't believe in myself anymore. And that's kind of like the consequence of stories being told this way. It sucks. I don't know. I'm still like working through it. I'll let you know when I come to the better answers.
Well, I mean, here's what I can offer. One, I understand why they don't want to alienate the audience and how hurtful that can be for queer people or people of color or any of the people who are disrespected by the hate speech to see that. I could see how that could be jarring for them. So I understand from that point of view. At the same time, you are the person that is like in some ways in their care because you signed on to give yourself to be part of the show. And I think that they do have a level of responsibility to you and your well-being and your mental health. And it sucks that, again, one can say it's to protect people from the hate speech, but I think it's probably also to protect people from something being too bad. You know, like everyone's just like, no, clutching their pearls would be too bad. But it sucks that you're the one that gets compromised in that. I'm really sorry that you've had to endure that.
No,
and I like see you and I get it. No, but it's like I see you and I get it. And I think that I had a similar experience, not near to the intensity that you had, but it was like on Survivor, I think that I got like boiled down to like a flat character, even though I like offered all these things as being a woman and the woman of color and the first woman to win the game in so many years and like the first Canadian to win, second Asian woman to ever win. It's like you provide all these things on paper, but then it's like, oh, you still kind of get flattened and serve the storyline that is comfortable to be told. Although I think that Survivor has improved a lot, so I get it. And I think that, here's what I'll say. I think you should publish the essay.
Yeah.
So the very first episode of this podcast, I actually recorded it when my season finished airing. Like I had all these feelings about my portrayal and what that meant for Asian people and for women and just because I studied media studies. I'm not like a scholar, but it's just like I've always been interested in pop culture. So I had all these feelings to talk about it. There was not really existing platforms for me to talk about it. And because of my contract, I couldn't start a podcast. So I just sat on this recording for a year and I was like, oh, I'd go back and forth for the year. I'd be like, do people care? Nobody cares. Maybe someone's interested. Nobody cares. And then finally, after my contract ended, I'm like, you know what? I care. And I'm going to put this out there. And I don't know what people are going to think, but I'm going to put it out there. And then I released it. And there was like such a positive response from people who were like, thank you. You have articulated something that I felt. And these are just viewers. These are viewers who heard my experience and they felt like it was similar to their real life. And I think it was so touching to see that it actually resonated with people. And through doing something that really felt true to me, I was able to connect with people. So all that's to say is there are going to be people who care about the essay. Maybe not the usual reality TV fans. I mean, the people who just talk about reality TV, they've moved on to the millions of other dating shows. But like the people who will be affected by the essay are going to find it and they're going to feel something from it. So I think you should release it. I really do think so.
Yeah. Sorry about it. I feel like, yeah, it's probably that aspect of like, oh my God, no one's going to care. But yeah, I think I probably will soon at some point. Like, as long as I don't get in trouble. I did get it approved. Like, Netflix actually did approve it, which is crazy.
Okay, there you go.
But like, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just like worrisome.
Because it's also like you're trying to like move past it. You're trying to process this crazy experience. And you're like, oh, does this open up the can of worms again? Do I re-enter the conversation and re-enter the zeitgeist when there's probably part of you that wants to put it behind you?
Yeah, lobotomize it out of my brain. But I also do think it'll be like very like healing in a way. So it probably will. Just need to get over that feeling of like, it doesn't matter, like nobody cares, everybody's moved on, like, you know what I mean? But I've never moved on from anything, so.
Exactly. Well, I want to ask you about another uncomfortable moment. And I think this was another moment that stuck out to me from your time at Perfect Match. And it was that moment when you were talking to your match and they suggested exploring your bisexuality and you just like nipped that in the bud and you're like, no, I'm monogamous. So it's clear that there's this misunderstanding about bisexuality. Is this fetishization of your bisexuality something that you're used to encountering, or was that something that was new to you when you were on TV?
So I've never dated anybody who had an issue with it, like me being bisexual. And I think that's one of those things that, I mean, I want to say luck, but I also don't think it's luck. I think I'm pretty intentional with the people that I date. So it's never been an issue in that aspect. But I think I am more in tune with how bisexuality is treated, like in media. Like, for example, like on Too Hot to Handle. And that was one of the issues with the girl I was with, was I was very much like, I do not want this to be portrayed as like oh my God, two girls kissing, it's cute. And like guys saying it's hot. I was like, no, don't do that. Cause like I actually like her and like that's weird. And so I'm always like on the lookout for that when it comes to reality TV because I don't want it to be edited that way. Because I feel like we already have enough of that, you know? And it's also like unfortunate because I think sometimes it's just they are just being cute and they do just want to kiss and like whatever, like who cares? But I think it's made into something bigger because of the way that it can be portrayed sometimes where people are like, right, it's about their sexuality. They're not taking it seriously instead of the fact that it's like, hey, they were casted as like, what, 10 of the horniest people in the world? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that might probably be more part of it than their sexuality. But yeah, so I'm definitely like always trying to make sure that it's not ever talked about in a way that could be fetishized, like on camera. And I also just think it's gross and annoying and weird. I mean, I just don't think it's that difficult of a concept to understand. It's in the name, bisexual. What do you not get? It doesn't say anything about non-monogamy, everything like that. That's like a separate conversation with your partner. There's plenty of straight people who are non-monogamous. So that's like a separate conversation. But yeah, he was really annoying.
If you had known that Too Hot to Handle was a hetero reality show, would you have done it?
Honestly, probably, yeah, like at the time. But I wish I would have like known that going in. You know what I mean? Like I wish they had said like the straight dating show. And like to the end, they maintained it wasn't. But I think I would, it's like I still date men. Like I'm still interested in men. At this point now in my life, no. But like at 21 in my party girl era, I just wanted to go on vacation. I think like part of the issue was that confusion where it's like everybody's telling you, no, it's not a straight dating show. And I think honestly it would have sucked either way. Like if the girl I liked had been there, I still would have liked her at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? But it would have helped a lot with the confusion aspect of it to like have that be obvious instead of being like people are saying one thing when it's clearly not. That was confusing. But I mean, at 21, I probably still would have done it. I still would have liked her. I still wouldn't have cared.
I mean, I understand the whole point of the show is it's like you go to the show under the guise that it's something else and oh my God, it's too hot to handle. But if you had the choice, I think it would have made the biggest difference, right? Like if you know what you were going into, for sure, huge difference.
Yeah, it would have been a lot less like traumatic. I would have been like, oh, it's kind of hot. Like we're not allowed. Wait, we weren't allowed anyway, but like, you know what I mean? We're extra not allowed.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't have been hot. I'm just saying that to make me feel better. But like, either way, it's hard. It's hard either way. You know, I still would have liked her either way. So just for the confusion part of it, I think it's hard. Like when people, for example, like if you were to just like have someone in your life and they say they're accepting of your sexuality when it's a reoccurring issue that keeps coming up and you're like, okay, there's definitely some uncomfortability here. And then them not acknowledge it. It's just like really hard to unpack implicit biases like that, especially when it's worked into the concept of a reality show. And they're like, it's not straight. And I'm like, everything about this is the straightest shit I've ever seen.
Oh my God, I get it. It's like when people say that they're allies, they're like, oh yeah, I'm an ally to whatever community, but they don't actually operate in a way that's accommodating or supportive. It's like, oh, they just say it. They just like say that it's not a straight dating show, but like they don't actually take any action to make sure it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, we weren't asking for much. Like, we just wanted to be together.
Yeah. Can't you guys just kiss? Everyone else is kissing.
Bed?
Yeah.
Like, it was so bad. It was to the point on Too Hot to Handle where our matches, like James and Nigel, were going into bed together because everybody assumed that me and Britton would be going to bed together. And then it would be like, no, you guys have to sleep with the men. And we were like, they're literally already in bed together.
And I feel like on other seasons, after like people break up or if it's clear that two of the girls are single, I see them sleep in the beds together all of the time. But then in this case, were like, not allowed.
We were not allowed. And even after our season, it's so funny because I'm friends with people that were on the later seasons, but they were like, girls cannot shower together anymore.
Wow.
And then, because I'm friends with Christine, she was like, you literally ruined it for the later seasons. They were like, girls can't shower together anymore. Girls can't go to the same house after the show together anymore. Like all these rules. If you're just thinking about this in the 4th season, then obviously like you have not like really thought about what it means to not be a straight dating show.
Yeah.
And now, on top of that, apparently we fucked it up for everybody else.
Now it's really not, quote unquote, not a straight dating show.
Yeah, they're like, we're not even going to take the chance of this shit happening again. They're like, no naked showers, no nothing.
So are you done with reality TV?
I mean, I would do it again. I'm like, I feel like I'm not, you know, I just want to be able to like go on there and be myself and have it not be an issue. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Such a huge ask.
yeah, like, I'm like, I like it. I have fun. But then it's like every time I go, I feel like it's like the things that I'm brought on for, which is obviously like I'm a massive diversity checklist. Like, I'm like checking off every single box. But then that's like an issue. And it's kind of like, I just want to like be able to like be myself and have that be good and not have to be like censored or edited and everything. And I'm like, it's really not my fault. It's not like I went on there and was all talking about I hate speech. Like, that was somebody else did that to me, you know? But then it's like I'm paying the consequences, or it's like, right, I liked a girl. Like, I'm sorry, she's hot. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like when I was watching your confessionals, it was like your confessionals about how someone didn't match with you. And you were just like, I don't really get it. Like, it was just so funny because I was watching you and I'm like, I feel like I get her. I feel like I get her vibe. Again, maybe it's like the queer woman of color Filipino. I'm like, I get her vibe. I get how she sees that this is ridiculous. But again, even though you check the diversity boxes, it's like you don't fit into the mold of what they're like looking for on the show, or you don't fit within the guidelines of the show. So I'm like, oh, I feel like they don't properly know what to do with her and how to tell her story
all the time.
They're on reality TV or anywhere.
Really know what to do with you. They're like, love you.
Yeah,
we have no idea what to do with you.
Okay, but that actually is sick though. Honestly, I love that. Yeah, then you can just like make your own stuff.
But yeah, it's like I like it. I just wish there was more shows where it'd be like, I don't know, not just straight white drama. And I'm like, this is so dumb. Like, are we really like crying over this person? You don't even know his middle name.
I publicly came out last year, and then now it's like so fun watching the straight reality dating shows because I'm just like, this is like not real. This is all ridiculous. Like, this is like not, and not saying that people are lying, but I'm like, what is this drama? Like, again, if there are queer people listening, I feel like you'll get it when I'm like, what are you even fighting about? What are you even crying about? This is like not real.
And then I say that, but I'm so dramatic. Like, I remember during the last like final night of like Perfect Match when we had the party, I came up with the game where it was like everyone was kissing. And I came up with that because I was bored. And then that broke up like 3 couples. And the producers were like, who even came up with this? And I was like, I was bored. Did I know that was going to happen? Like, no. Like, I literally was just like, let's play make out flip cup because I'm bored. I literally set the game up and walked away. I didn't even think anyone was actually going to play it. I just had nothing to do. And then I broke up 3 couples. And then Britton, who was like, obviously she's the one I've liked on the 2 shows, she like kissed the guy during the game. And she's like, I thought a producer came up with this game and we had to do it. And I saw her do that, immediately burst into tears.
Oh my God.
And we were like playing tag across this house and it was just like so unserious. Like, you have all these couples like arguing and yelling, and then me and Britton are like running around like in the jungle and she's all trying to chase me down and I'm all drunk. And it's like, this is so unserious. So it's like, I like reality TV. It's very much like weird. It's like a fun thing to do, to hang out with people. I mean, it's my best friends on there. But yeah, I wish there was like a bisexual dating show.
I know. I feel like they have to figure out how to do that. I feel like I see so many people who are like, they need to do a queer Love is Blind. I think they only have, what's the
Ultimatum?
The lesbian ultimatum scared me. I remember watching it and I'm like, can I be straight again? I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no disrespect to everybody on the lesbian ultimatum, but I mean, it was intense drama. I feel like they have to figure out a less toxic format that the queer people can go on.
Well, the ultimatum in general, I'm like, this is an insane concept. I'm watching it. But like, there's something wrong with you to even join.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, but this is a lot. Yeah, I feel like I honestly like would like it if it wasn't even a spinoff. I feel like they should just have their own show like curated for like different like queers, bisexuals, lesbian, gay, even non-binary, like whatever. But like, I'm like, it wouldn't be that hard to come up with show concepts that would be more like suiting for them, right?
I mean, back in the day, there was A Shot at Love with Tila Tequila.
Oh
and
my
like,
God.
That worked.
It was so much.
It was so over the top, way ahead of its time. Definitely like one of the first times I watched TV and I was like, I am feeling things I'm not used to feeling. But yeah, they can figure it out.
Even like, I think they made a bisexual Are You the One? That one was...
Oh, the one where everyone was pan. That was amazing.
Yes. That one was
possible.
Good. And then also there's so many, I'm like, they know that bisexuals are like good at reality TV. They're on every season. I'm like, you can't escape them. And I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot more people are queer on these shows than they think. It's not that they're not out. It's just that they don't say it on reality TV because it's like, they look at the people who are out, like me, like Carousel, like Francesca, and they're like, Jesus, people are coming at their necks. Let's not say that.
Yeah.
But they're like out. It's just that they don't really act on it on reality TV for a reason.
I know. And it's so funny because it's like, there are more bisexual people than gays and lesbians. It's so wild to me that they're just not better represented on TV.
Yeah, it's tough. You have to be like very careful, especially with like not getting fetishized and stuff like that too.
Mm-hmm. So I want to know, what has it been like for you to navigate the world post-reality TV? I think especially because what's so great about you is you are sharing your thoughts and opinions that challenge the status quo. You're talking about science, you're talking about physics, you're talking about witchy spirituality, all these things. What has it been like?
It's been good, I think. I like have always kind of like creating content, stuff like that. Like I used to do on TikTok. And so what I've always wanted to do in my life is like be a writer. And so I kind of just like leaning into that creative aspect and just talking about things I like and whatever. I don't know. I don't really niche because I get bored. I'm also ADHD. So like I can't, or else I just won't post anything ever, you know? But yeah, it's actually been like really fun and like having this new platform and trying out different things and connecting with different people. Obviously, like I am grateful for reality to get that in the day because it like opens up so many different avenues for you. So that's been like fun to explore. But right now I'm working on like writing a book and trying to like create more content I enjoy making and that hopefully people like. And that's pretty much it. And traveling. I like to travel. I'm not married, I don't have kids. Nothing's keeping me anywhere.
Go for it. Honestly, unless you need to or you decide to, just do all the things.
Yeah.
Is there something that you really wanted to say that I didn't ask you about today?
No, I don't think so. I just want to say thank you for like having me. Obviously, it's so good to talk to somebody who's like has a very similar background and we've had like a shared experience. Like obviously it's different, but also kind of similar. So that's really nice to be able to like have the space to talk about this kind of stuff.
Oh my gosh, it was my pleasure. Honestly, I was so excited to talk to you today. If people want to follow you or anything, where can they do that?
So it's my name, Dominique Defoe, DOMINIQUE on Instagram and TikTok.
Amazing. Honestly, Dominique, amazing, so smart. You represented yourself and all the communities you're part of so well. Like, honestly, like cheering you on as a fellow queer Filipino woman. I am so excited to see what you do next.
Thank you so much.
I really, really, really hope Dominique releases that essay. And thank you so much, Dominique, for your time and for sharing all of your insights so vulnerably with us. And if you know somebody who you think could benefit from hearing about queer representation, about women of color on dating shows, make sure you share this episode with them. I love to end each episode by answering a listener question. And this week's question is, what are you reading? So right now, I'm actually rereading one of my favorite books. It's The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. If you're into Greek mythology, very much for you. It's like a retelling of the Trojan War. It's very queer. It's very romantic. There's tragedy. The first time I read it, I was bawling my eyes out. And I think that now, since it's fall, the nights are so long, it's time to be cozy and at home. I think that there's something so comforting about rereading a book that I love and leaning into the tears. So let me know in the comments if you know of any Greek mythology retelling books that I should be reading this winter. And thank you to the listener for asking me that question. If you haven't already, I would love if you could subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. It's at Happy to See Me Pod. Thank you so much for spending a bit of time with me this week, and I will be happy to see you next Monday.